I'm Jesus Caraballo, and this is my testimony of how God saved my life. When I was a kid, like, I knew that I was really different from a lot of other people. I wasn't really like others in a lot of ways. I was quiet, sensitive, reserved. And even more than that, at a young age, I found out that I realized that my birth father wasn't in my life. That because of his actions, my mom had to move with my two brothers and me in her stomach to America. And I was a kid and I didn't know how to process something like that. I didn't know how to work through it. So I held it inward. And I didn't want to take it out on anybody else. I knew it wasn't their fault. So from a young age, I started taking it out on me. The confusion, the sadness, and the anger. I blamed it all on myself. I believed that it was my fault, that everything was the way that it was, that I had to work in order to, I guess, be worthy of love, because I felt like I didn't deserve it. And years kept going on. I hid this and it only grew. It never went away. It only got worse and it kept going and going, and eventually it grew into pure self-hatred and depression and so many negative feelings towards just myself. And keeping it bottled up like that, I had no idea how to cope with it. So I did the only way I knew how to cope with it. And I ended up falling into lust for a long time. And every time I felt worse and worse about myself. The guilt got worse and I hated myself each and every time. And I believe that even though I heard so much in my life about how God's so loving and merciful, I thought that He'd want nothing to do with me, and I felt I should never be in His presence ever again. And I kept this feeling for a long time into high school, and I'm in my sophomore year and it's only grown, and in the environment that my high school is, it only really got worse. I kept to myself and it only had time to grow. I felt alone and separated, even though I had family that loved me. A stepfather, a mom, a grandma, brothers that all loved me and adored me. I still felt alone inside. That my life, I could feel these emotions, but they really meant nothing at the end of the day. The happiness I felt was temporary. The joy I felt was temporary. It all went away and then it would just be back. And I had to choose either to continue to pretend that it's not there, to confront the reality that I hated myself and that I had depression, and I couldn't. It was scary because I didn't want to confront something like that. I didn't want to believe that I felt that way about myself. And then in January of 2024 is when God started working, because He knew that my head was no place for Him to speak at that point. It was only filled with negativity and hate. So He went through my phone. I scrolled a lot to escape my thoughts. And one day I see a Christian video, something simple and something random. I think it was just like a quick prayer. And then I like it, I scroll, and then there's another, and another, and another, and another. And for months, it's just, my feed is almost full with it. And then it's about May, early May, where I realized that even despite how I feel, and despite the thoughts and the feelings I had about myself that I was in denial about, I knew I had to go back to church. It was the only way to stop how I felt. And the moment I was gonna ask my mom, take me to church, please, she comes to me and tells me that they're gonna have a retreat the next weekend for high schoolers, and then asked if I wanted to go. And the yes that I said in that moment was all that God needed for a yes. I went to the retreat, and I brought a journal. The first night, we go to bed, and I journaled to him. I didn't know what I was doing. I just wrote, and I wrote about how sorry I was to him, how sorry I was to Jesus, how ashamed I felt of what I was doing, about who I was. I felt so sorry to him and how much I hurt him. And I just told him that I wanted my father back, and I was done trying to do things alone. And the first moment he had, he swept me right back up. First activity, the next morning, we were told to write about things that someone said that hurt us and who that person was. And I thought, and I realized that the person who said so many negative things to me was me. And I had to write down from myself all the things that I felt about myself. And in the beginning, it was just small insults. And then it got worse and worse and worse. I had so much to write about myself that I had to turn the page over and write even more. And the biggest part of it was big bold letters in the middle of the page. I wrote mistake about myself. And I was crying. I was hurting because it was then that I came to terms that I hated myself and that I had depression and how angry I was at myself and all the darkness in my heart. That I came to terms with it, and it hurt. And we were told to walk up and put it in a basket in front of this small wooden cross as like a symbol to leave it at the foot of the cross. And I did so. I went back to my seat and I started crying even harder. The hardest I've cried in my entire life. And I felt so scared and alone. I felt like it was the end for me. I completely gave up on myself. And in that moment, a server came up to me and he hugged me. And in that moment, it wasn't a server that hugged me. It was Jesus himself holding me in his embrace. He held me. And in the moment that he held me, all of the anger, the self-hatred, the depression, it left in an instant. It was gone, and it was replaced with love. The love of God, the love of Jesus, the love that he had for the one sheep that he found, that he chased down. He ripped down every lie, everything that I felt for 16 years. He tore it all down. And he held me like I've never been held before. And I've known love before, but that was when I knew true love. That was when I knew what love really meant. That's when I knew that in that moment, that's who Jesus was. Pure love, a father to me that only wanted me back. He didn't care what I'd done. He didn't care what I do. He just wanted me back. He wanted his son back like I wanted my father back. And he held me. And in that moment, he saved my life. And he wasn't done there. Months and months go on. I become a server. I go to formation. And the leader, Jairus, she's talking to us about it's a bit fuzzy, but it's sort of like blocks in our heart, different, like a passage that Jesus has to go through, healing one wall after the next and taking it down and eventually getting to the root. And it was in that moment that I knew what that root was. It was the wound from the beginning, knowing that my father didn't want me. Knowing that from a child, that was the root cause of so much of my pain. And I couldn't control myself. I cried again and again. And that whole week, he worked with me. He worked through it with me every single day, from Sunday all the way to Friday. He worked and he worked. And he showed me 3 things that I remember. One, that everybody is here for a purpose. So I was in an accident, and God never made a mistake, and that includes me. He didn't mess up when making me. 2, he helped me to forgive my father, to let go of the sadness and the anger and the confusion that I felt about why he didn't want to be in my life. And 3, he helped me to love my father, to not only forgive him, but to love on him. Even though I knew it'd be a long time before I ever got to even see him again, he helped me to love him. And he helped me to let go of the pain. And in doing so, that opened so many doors. He freed me from lust. He freed me from so many sins. He kept transforming me into a new person. And I went from someone who was barely able to speak up for himself to someone who can say a testimony like this now, and for who knows how many people. And I can do so in confidence because I know that this will help somebody. Because the love that God gave to me, he showed me that I'm his precious son, and that I can be a light and a reflection of his love to others.
Who is Jesus to you?
My father, forever and always.
Amen. Amen. Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Thank you again for sharing.
Made me cry.
Oh, yeah, you got us. Y'all had chills.
No, like he literally made me cry. Bad.
Trust me,
It was me
your
holding it in the background.
Your testimony is powerful, and not forget it. It was only the beginning, and it's funny because he sent you to a retreat that's literally called Genesis, which is in the beginning, and that was the beginning of life with him. So, amen. Yo, guys.